Welcome back to Giant Monster Games! My name is Adrian, and today we are doing a more casual deck that is going to be dragons. Yes, all of my giant monster-loving friends out there, this is going to be a dragons deck just for you. But before we actually break this deck down, if you want to pick this deck up in paper, head over to Flipside Gaming and use promo code GIANTMonsterGames to get 10% off your online purchase. And if you want to pick this deck up for MTGO, there's a link below this video where the deck is all nicely put together on card holder for you, so you can quickly pick it up. Helps out the channel so I can keep making decks just like this for you. Okay, let's get into it, starting out with what are our actual dragons? Well, we have a bunch of them. The first ones we're going to talk about are Thunderbreak Regent, Skyship Stalker, and Molten Steel Dragon. Now, all these guys are kind of our mid to... I say mid-range, but they're actually our early game dragons, technically. They're all going to be costing 4 or just a little bit more than 4. Technically, Molten Steel Dragon actually can cost 4 and 4 life if we want to pay that. Usually we don't have to, but they are our early game dragons, so we can usually get them to play, start swinging at our opponent's face, and start making our opponent realize, wait, these people are playing dragons in Modern. That's insane. What do these guys actually do? Thunderbreak Regent is going to do damage to our opponent whenever they target one of our dragons, so dealing some extra damage is always nice. Skyship Stalker is a pumpable dragon. He also can do a bunch of other stuff. He can get First Strike, he can get Haste. Haste really only works if we play him for 5 mana, but you get the idea. We can pump him up and get a little bit more damage in. And then Molten Steel Dragon is also just a pumpable dragon where we can actually pay life or we can pay mana. So we can swing in with a 4-4 and then make it a 5-4 and then a 6-4, whatever we want to do. Hopefully we can swing in for lethal with this as well. So this is kind of the idea. Carrying over to our next set of dragons, we actually have Kolaghan, both Dragonlord Kolaghan and Kolaghan the Storm's Fury. Dragonlord Kolaghan is just super value. He's a little bit more expensive, so we're only running one of them. You might want to run 2 if you're going to upgrade this deck, because he has flying, he has haste, and he gives all other creatures, in this case all of our dragons, haste as well. And then whenever our opponent casts a creature or planeswalker spell with the same name as a card in his or her graveyard, they're going to lose 10 life. Not super relevant, but against some creature-based decks, it may be extremely relevant, because we're going to be doing a ton of extra damage if they want to play creatures that they've already put into the graveyard, which ideally we're going to kill creatures really quickly, because once we get some dragons out, they shouldn't be staying around for very long. Kolaghan the Storm's Fury is also just another really high value creature, because whenever a dragon we control attacks, creatures we control get +1/+0 until end of turn. He is a dragon himself, so when he swings in, he's going to give buffs to all of his creatures, including himself as well. So it doesn't just target other creatures, it's including him as well. We can also dash him in for 5, so if our opponent is playing some removal where we are a little bit scared they're not going to destroy something, we can always just dash him in, he gets haste, he gets a swing in, and then he comes back to our hand, so we can just kind of keep doing that over and over again, which is nice. And again, if we're going to swing with this guy late game and we have 2 or 3 other dragons on play, we're going to swing in for a lot of extra damage. So he is a game-winning dragon in my books. The only downside is he is a legendary creature, so we only want to run 2 of them, because we can't have 2 of them in our hand, or 2 of them in play at the same time, I should say, but like trying to just constantly dash in one after another, it's just not going to be worth it. So we're only running 2. And the last 2 dragon-type creatures we have is Dragon Master Outcast and Bogardan Hellkite. These 2 cards are the bottom and the top of our curve, which is kind of funny. So Dragon Master Outcast is at the beginning of our upkeep. If we have 6 or more lands, we get to put a 5/5 dragon token into the battlefield. This deck is a land ramp deck as well, so this is actually going to trigger a lot. We're only running 2 of her though, because she's $3 a card right now, and I don't want to break the bank on you guys. $70 is already a little bit high, so if you are upgrading this deck, running 4 of this is absolutely a fantastic idea. I highly recommend it. Again, I didn't run 4 because this is a budget deck. Bogardan Hellkite, on the other hand, is the top of our curve, as I said, and it is really unique because it is also a bolt spell in itself. It has flash, so we can play it on our opponent's turn if we really want to, and then when it comes into play, it deals 5 damage divided as we choose amongst any number of target creatures or players. Lots of time we're going to literally play this guy and then put 5 damage to our opponent's face, because 5 damage is a lot of damage. That is literally 1/4 of your opponent's health. So this is what he's going to be playing. He's the top of our curve. We're hopefully going to play him and close out the game, which is usually what we want to try and do, because not always going to be swinging in to win the game, but playing this guy and blowing our opponent's face off for 5 damage is definitely going to help you win the game. Now, I mentioned this was a mana ramp deck, so what do we actually have for mana ramp? Well, we have 2 creatures. We have Sakura Tribelder and Sylvan Caryatid. This is actually a 3-color deck, if you haven't noticed at this point, so we do want the ability to go and fetch up pieces that we are going to need, specifically other colored lands, because that is something we're going to need to do, is fix our mana base. Sakura Tribuilder allows us to sacrifice it and search up a basic land of our choice, so we can always use Sakura Tribuilder to block something and then sacrifice it in response, which is the most common response with it. Sylvan Caryatid is literally just providing any color of our choice. It has Hexproof and Defender, and it is a 0/3, so we can usually block quite a bit of stuff. A lot of aggro decks, we can kind of chump block with it, and because it has Hexproof, our opponent can't just blow it up at a will's notice. Other than that, we also have Farseek and Search for Tomorrow. This is going to help us fetch up other lands. Again, Search for Tomorrow is going to be fetching up a basic land of any kind. Farseek is a little bit different, and it's actually a little bit special in this deck because it allows us to fetch up a plains, island, swamp, or mountain, which is really good because we have a bunch of swamp forests and mountain forests in the deck, so we can actually go and fetch up these things with this card rather than actually having to like do the crazy fetch shock thing, which is normally really good, but we just can't afford it because we are a budget deck. And the last thing before we talk about said lands we'll be fetching up is a removal. We're running 4 copies of Terminate, no lightning bolts, no other kind of removal. We are running Terminate because it destroys target creature. It cannot be regenerated. This is really good because we don't really deal with aggro decks very well. We can't really deal with Death Shadow very well. We have a hard time with Tarmogoyfs. We have a hard time with a lot of other big creatures, and Lightning Bolt just doesn't take care of them. We really just want to get rid of them entirely. Bam, Terminate is gonna come to the rescue at instant speed nonetheless, which is fantastic. So it is in here in place of Lightning Bolts. If you're wondering, if you're gonna ask why no Lightning Bolts, Terminate, getting rid of creatures is a better plan. Moving over to our mana base, we have a variety of tri-lands and check lands. Tri-lands are, when they come to the battlefield, they enter the battlefield tapped unless you have 2 or more basic lands. We generally don't have this problem because we have a lot of ways of fetching up basic lands, and then check lands come into play tapped unless you have a specific type of land in play already. In certain cases, like Dragon Skull Summit, it is going to come into play tapped unless you have a swamp or a mountain. This shouldn't be a really big problem for us because we have a lot of ways of getting basic lands, and it shouldn't be very hard. By the way, we have Cinderglade, Rootbound Crag, Smoldering Marsh, and Dragon Skull Summit are the check/tri lands that we are currently running in this deck in a variety of numbers. The other lands we have that are not basic, we have Savage Lands and Haven of the Spirit Dragon. Savage Lands we're running 4 of because it produces all 3 of the colored mana we need, so why not run them? I know it comes into play tapped, but it's providing a very good service. This is the one time that I would be comfortable saying, well, let's play a land that comes into play tap no matter what, solely because it's providing all 3 colors of mana for us. And then Haven of the Spirit Dragon is just a way of, 1, casting different colors for our dragons, 2, we can sacrifice it and then return a dragon from our graveyard to our hand, which generally late game can be really handy. We don't want too many of this card because we have other things we need to be casting that are not dragons, and we don't have any use for colorless mana, so we're only running 1 of this. Outside of that, we are running 5 forests, 4 mountains, and a single swamp. Now, if you want to take this deck out to your F&M, you're going to want a sideboard, so let's talk about the sideboard. By the way, the sideboard for this deck is entirely shifted towards control because we're already an aggro deck. We're going to swing into faces. We're not caring about that. We need a way of stopping our opponent's deck from kind of doing what they're doing. So we have Duress and Slaughter Games are the first 2 cards we're talking about. Duress allows us to search our opponent's hand, get rid of a non-creature spell. We have big creatures too. We don't really care about their creatures, but in case we're running against something like Storm, we're going to want to get rid of pieces out of that. And then Slaughter Games, we get to name a non-land card and then search our opponent's library, deck, all this kind of stuff, and remove it from the game, which is really quite fantastic. Slaughter Games is also good because it can't be countered, which is very nice if we manage to get this off before Storm manages to go exploding. The next 2 cards, Destructive Revelry and Pyroplasm, allow us to deal with aggro decks. If our opponent is going wide, we can always Pyroplasm the board to get rid of a bunch of stuff, and Destructive Revelry works very well if we're running against an Ensnaring Bridge or any artifact/enchantments we need to get rid of. Additionally, it does a couple damage to our opponent's face, which is always nice when we're trying to take our opponent to 0, which is our current objective. The last 2 cards we have is Guttural Response and Nile Spellbomb. Guttural Response, if we're playing against a blue deck that is going to be countering our stuff, we can hold on to this as our ace in the hole and then counter a cryptic command or something of the sort, preventing our opponent from really screwing up our day. And then Nile Spellbomb is really good against, again, blue decks that are going to be using stuff like Snapcaster Mage, or in a lot of cases it's our only real response to Dredge, because Dredge can give us a little bit of troubles as well, because Dredge is a little bit faster than us, so we do need to have a backup plan. And that is the entire deck, but a budget deck is never complete without some upgrade options, so here's a bunch of cards you guys can consider putting in your versions of this deck. Dragon Bloodmother, Stormbreath Dragon, Thundermaw Hellkite, and Dragonlord Atarka are all very good cards. I would highly recommend, if you do have the budget for it, Blood Mother is just going to be creating a ton of dragons for you, which is absolutely fantastic. Stormbreath Dragon is actually probably the best card, and I would immediately upgrade to it if you have the budget, because it comes in for 5 as a 4/4 flyer haste protection from white, so it can't be path to exiled. And then once you have enough mana, you can make it monstrous, which means it gets +3/+3 in this case, becoming a 7/7 flying protection from white creature. And when it becomes monstrous, it also deals damage to each opponent equal to the number of cards in their hand. Thundermaw Hellkite, on the other hand, let's talk about that guy. He is, whenever he enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each creature with flying your opponent controls and taps down those creatures. Because it has haste, you're generally playing this guy swinging in right away, and if they do have potential blockers such as Lingering Souls, goodbye all of them. They get to go away, and because we're playing a Dragons deck, everything flies. We are literally going to fly in over top of everything and tap down all those flying creatures. Ba-bam! Goodbye, thanks for coming out, and don't return tomorrow. And the last card we have is Dragonlord Kolaghan. Dragonlord Kolaghan is also fantastic because it deals 5 damage divided as you choose amongst any number of creatures or planewalkers your opponent control when you bring this guy into play. So it is a really good way of wiping your opponent's board, getting rid of some stuff that may be damaging or troubling to you, and then he is a flying trample 8/8. So that's really hard for your opponent to deal with. I honestly, if you're going to put this guy in the deck, just run one of them. You don't need more than one of this guy because you're going to play him at the very top of your curve. So he is the potential late game bomb you want, but you don't want to be running into 2 or 3 of this guy because you're probably never going to play more than one in a game, even if you have the option to play more than one in a game. Now, upgrades that are not dragons, we have Chandra, Torch of Defiance, and Kolaghan's Command. Chandra, Torch of Defiance is just super value in this deck. It deals damage to stuff, it allows us to draw extra cards, it adds mana, so it gives us mana ramp, it slices, dices, cuts, chops, grinds. She is absolutely fantastic. She's a little expensive right now because she is currently in Standard, and she is seeing play in Modern as well, but if you have the chance, throwing in at least 1 Chandra, possibly 2, would be a really good upgrade for this deck. You could actually probably pull out a couple of the mana ramp cards in place of Chandra, Torch of Defiance, and then Kolaghan's Command is really good. It actually sees quite a bit of play right now in Modern because it can return a creature from your graveyard to your hand, so in our case, our big super win the game cards can come back to our hand. It can make target player discard a card, which can be very helpful in some matchups. It destroys target artifact, which is nice to have that as well. And then the most important one is it deals 2 damage to target creature or player, allowing us to sometimes deal damage enough to kill some creatures that we don't really want on the board, or potentially just doing 2 damage to our opponent's face. The nice thing is we get to choose any 2 of these when we play this card, so we have a lot of options, which is always nice when you're playing Magic the Gathering. Now, the last 3 cards I'm going to suggest are all upgrades to the sideboard. If you're going to upgrade this deck to make it a little bit more competitive, they would be good options. We have Anger of the Gods, Surgical Extraction, and Abrupt Decay. Anger of the Gods is just better. I would run probably 2 Anger of the Gods and 2 Pyroplasms because Anger of the Gods tends to absolutely destroy Dredge and absolutely destroy some other decks out there because it's doing 3 damage to stuff and it's exiling things. When things die from Anger of the Gods, they get exiled, not just go to the graveyard. So if your opponent wants to play Dredge and they're going to play a creature, and when it dies, it gets exiled, they're not going to keep playing. The extra mana cost for it is actually completely negligible because our deck doesn't really care. We are a mana ramp deck. We are going to have 5 or 6 mana on turn 3, so we don't really mind that much. Surgical Extraction is just a more aggressive version than Slaughter Game, so you get to remove stuff out of your opponent's graveyard and then their entire deck in hand for 2 life or a black mana, usually 2 life, because why would you use your resources when you have life to spend? And then Abrupt Decay is a removal that can't be countered, which kind of makes it a little bit better than Terminate because our opponent can't stop us from killing their stuff. And one really good thing about Modern right now is most cards that matter are 3 mana or less, so that is something to keep in mind. And that is the entire upgrade section, and now we're going to move into a section for this deck only, because I know people are going to ask a bunch of questions, so we're going to talk about why are you not playing this specific card, Adrian? Well, the first 2 cards we have is Dragon Speaker Shaman and Dragonlord Servant. Both of these cards make our dragons cheaper. Dragon Speaker Shaman, for one, is not legal in Modern, which is why we're not playing it, and Dragonlord Servant is legal in Modern, but I tested it out, and it's just not fast enough for the deck. It is better to get extra mana and mana ramp into that stuff than it is to make our dragons cheaper. Especially because if we play this guy, say, on turn 2, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna make our dragons cheaper, and then he gets blown up, and we literally just wasted our turn 2 for something that we could have just went and fetched up in a land entirely. So I took him out, I tested with him, he is not worth playing, it is not as good as it looks, don't run this card. The next 2 cards we have is Atarka World Render and Dragon Tempest. Now, again, both these cards seem really good. I mean, Atarka World Render, all of our dragons get double strike, that seems amazing. Well, sort of, I mean, it seems amazing, but in reality, we don't want to aim to kill our opponent by 15 points over. We really want to aim to kill our opponent by exactly what their health total is. So this is a win more card, not really helping us win the game, it's helping us really win the game when we actually do win with it, and it doesn't do enough. I'm not playing it because it doesn't do enough right away, especially when we play it. Dragon Tempest, on the other hand, if I'm gonna play Dragon Tempest, I may as well just play Impact Tremors because they are doing the same thing, except Impact Tremors is technically a little bit easier, so I'm not playing Dragon Tempest. It didn't work out. I would rather play more dragons than rather play something that gets more triggers when I play dragons. So this is the, why didn't you play a certain card, Adrian? They seem so good in this deck because it's a dragons deck. This is your answers before you guys even ask them in the comment section below. That has been the entire deck. If you like this video and want to see more of them, don't forget to subscribe to Giant Monster Games, like this video, and leave a comment on what you think about this casual Dragons deck. I say it's casual, but it can still win games. Okay, until next time though, my name's Adrian, this is Giant Monster Games, and don't forget to game like a giant monster. I would like to throw a huge shout out to all of the Patreon supporters over on Patreon. You guys are helping make videos like this possible. Thank you guys for being so freaking awesome.